story about best piece of wisdom, it was applicable to me in my personal life, and I've tried to apply it in my professional career, which has gone through, as you say, several gears. I'm somebody who experienced adversity from a very young age. My father is a blind man, so a significant disability, I guess, but it's never sort of stopped him. But my mother then, who was very dependent on, obviously, died of cancer when I was 14. And, those things, I think, are the most formative to my sort of drive, zest. I heard the thing about zest earlier. I thought, well, the other thing that is what you scrape off a grapefruit, put in your gin and tonic. Then you come from the investment banking world. I had a couple of those last night. But in any event, I was playing football, and I was 12 years. I remember absolutely clear. I was 12 years old. I'd sort of grown to about the height I am now, and we started playing this football season. I had a couple of good games, and I remember clearly the first time ever playing a game where the guy that was playing on me had absolutely no interest in the ball. He only cared about me. He was just shutting me down. No matter what I did, I'd get there and be taken out instantly. Every time I touch it, and this went on the first quarter. And I thought, no, this is fine, I'll man up. And went on the second quarter. We got to the third quarter, and we're sort of losing. And my dad gets the guy that's commentating for him to bring him out to the huddle. We're all standing around, the coaches giving us a serve. And my dad pulled me over and he just said, mate, what are you doing? I said, I don't know. And I said that. I was like, the guy, he's just not interested in the ball. He's just shutting me down. And he goes, adapt and overcome. Whatever you're doing, stop doing it. Stop focusing on what is not within your control. Now, he didn't actually use those words. I heard them much later from a mentor of mine. But that's what he meant. He meant, think about what else you could be doing. And so I looked at this guy, and he was a pretty big unit. I thought I'd run off him. I covered more territory than the early explorers, but I'll tell you what, I picked up a heap of touches, kicked a few goals, and we won the game. That I've always said that to people: adapt and overcome. Whenever people oftentimes when they're concerned about something, in the office, they're not winning a mandate, they can't get time with a client on something. It's like, I love sort of films and stuff like that. So grab a protractor, find an angle and go in. And I think that flexibility and sort of innovative thinking is what really has been helpful for me right throughout my career.
One thing I always, in Guy's world as an investment banker, I find fascinating is that you get to the end of a very complex set of months, negotiations, due diligence, and it's so often that you can get right to the end result where there's hundreds of millions of dollars at stake, in some cases billions in your world, and you're right there. And it falls away on one phone call or one tiny incident. You talk about adapt and overcome. I mean, that would I'd find that extremely difficult when you've done all that work. Big stakes involved, big money involved, big kind of corralling all this stuff. That resilience. And you guys seem to have this great way, or you do, of just like, there is some emotional disappointment, but you just pick up and you go to the next deal.
There have been times when that's been really, really tough, particularly when you think you've got a promise from somebody and then for whatever reason they don't deliver on it. That's, I think, the biggest challenge is when you kind of get let down, rather than just the kind of, somebody else has got their name in the paper, having secured the deal and you lost. But it's interesting because through that time I was, I think, employing the sort of reflection that you would as a Stoic, even though I didn't know anything about it. And in fact, the T-shirt idea, I'm thinking we're going to go to Stoicon in October, and I'm going to make myself a T-shirt and say, I'm a Stoic, I just didn't know it, or something like that. Because, you really do. It was subsequently, when I was at Arthur Anderson, really good mentor of mine, a guy that plucked me out of university, gave me a scholarship, told me not to finish my law degree. I did law and commerce at Monash University, and he gave me a scholarship very early and just said, quit it, come and join me. And I said, no, it's something I wanted to do, so I went and did that. But when I joined him, he said to me, he goes, just relax sometimes and focus on those things that are within your control and just try not to worry about those things that are not. He's the first person I ever heard say that. He didn't reference Stoicism, but that is definitely something I've actually articulated, expressed many times. And I come here and it's like the core of what we're talking about.
I'm going to move on to justice a little bit. in your dealings all over the world, did you experience a sense of justice and win-win? And I find that very an interesting point and question for you, because people will act very rational. They will act very sensible. They will act very logical, except when it comes to money. And you're in the highest League of Nations, if you will, or the arena where money is such an incredible focus and making more of it and so forth. And you're a highly ethical guy and friend. How have you balanced that from time to time? How do you think about that win-win in your world and building that process and seeing justice in what your colleagues do?
Look, you're absolutely right. At the heart of what I do, I work at the very pointiest end of capitalism. There's no doubt about it. Bulk of my clients, which are the major private equity funds, they have huge amounts of capital they need to deploy. They do very aggressive lending, financing structures on those assets, and they manage risk with hedging and all that kind of stuff. That's a huge pool of fees right there, and it is a nil-sum game. You know, there's something in me that makes me really unwell, is when you, my brother-in-law mentions it all the time, when you see somebody who feels that, as you know, there's a saying that every time a friend of mine, you know, is successful, a little piece of me dies. That's what a lot of the people I work with are like. You know, Marcus Aurelius 2.1 statement about get up in the morning and tell yourself, today I'm going to come across uncharitable. I wrote a bunch of notes down here. I was going treacherous, envious, ungrateful people. Well, I don't have to do that because I go to the office. It's full of them. Yeah, there is an element of what I do where you have to be like that, you know. But it's like, how do you operate within that? I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years, right, including the time after Anderson. The question is, how do you actually employ the virtues that you're talking about and still be successful?
Well, I jump in there really quick on it, because London's a tough town financially and business-wise. It just is. But there's two guys I've never heard a bad thing ever said in business around. One was Don McCarthy, and the second one is you. That you never hear a bad word said. So the values and the virtues that you're trying to employ, they seem to be working.
Well, this comes in a little bit to what's a good piece of advice, and probably not. It was the one that came to my mind first before I set up my dad. But my grandfather said to me one time, he said, "Son, never underestimate the value of being a good bloke." And you know, it's a bit like what Pat said about, you know, be nice to people on the way up, because you know you meet them again on the way down. And I've always been like that. It's paid off in spades. I mean, so often I've been in a situation where, as I say, a client has disappointed me. We've worked on a deal, got to a point, and in the end they said, "Oh, you know what? We'll give it to Goldman Sachs." And they're like, "Really?" And it doesn't matter what the reason for that is. You feel angry about it, right?
Drew works for Goldman Sachs over there as well. So.
Very good. But so what in the particular situation I'm citing, it was a merger, and the particular guy, the CFO that I've been working with, we didn't end up with the financing mandate we were supposed to have. He actually lost out. He was not the guy who was then made CFO of the combined group. Right. So I looked him up. 6 months later, I had his mobile number, it stayed the same, so I pinged him and caught up, and we went and had lunch. And he said to me, "You know what? You're the only person since I left, who's out of all of that, who's contacted me." I said, "Don't worry, mate, you'll turn up somewhere else." Turns out he did. He turned up as CFO of another portfolio company of another client of mine. Then when I become the CEO, we've just done a merger, and we have made a lot of money out of that firm, and he's paid me back handsomely. I just think, you know, that there's no point ever having a bad relationship.
Yeah. Very good. Temperance. In building and establishing a market presence within the city, what discipline do you have to continually maintain, and things you may have to say no to? So the temperance, and I think it's an interesting thing.
That's a big tie to what I just said. Yeah. You know, another thing when I talk to clients, you know, they'll say to you, or I know they say to my boss, because my boss comes to tell me, is just consistency. Just if you have a consistency over a decade, it's actually a USP. So few people do. They blow hot and cold. They're your best friend or your enemy, and it's just I don't see the benefit of that. And if you're consistent, you know, and honest, you build up that singular value, the most valuable thing that you can have, which is trust. When it comes to professional services organisation, no matter what you do, I think that is the most valuable thing, and that's how you win a mandate away from Goldman Sachs or Rothschild or whomever. It's because they're like, I know this person, I've known him for a long time, and I'm going to deliver for me.
Yeah, very good.
Oh, what did I have to say no to? That was hard. I was thinking about that when talking about Pat. I'd like to say saying no to people who just want to take advantage of you. You know, that is something that's a skill. Be it, you know, your boss, you know, who, to be honest, what does he care if you're an analyst working till 4 in the morning, grinding away all the time, and just comes back to you and says, listen, you know that piece of work you did last week on Thursday night till whatever time, yeah, we kind of need it updated this week, and it happens again. Now, as we heard today, there's a lot being done about that today in the industry. I think there's a lot more awareness of people who behave like that, but it is endemic in the industry. And being able to say to somebody, no, I, for whatever reason, can't do it, you know, somebody else, that was really quite hard at different times.
Is that that's a trained tactic, a trained habit, approach? I find it hard to say no as well. So.
I'm a big pleaser. I just do everything I can to, and you've got to realise that you've only got so much calorie burn you can give out and all the rest of it. But so you've got to balance it out, or you burn yourself out. But that's a tough one. And the other thing I would say I pride myself, I've definitely said no to, is basically gaining at the disadvantage of others. And in my game, there's a lot of people who build a career out of knifing others and taking their spot. Right? It's their single MO. And, you know, I was in a situation where I got capped out in terms of a ceiling. I was at Deutsche Bank. And, you know, I thought long and hard about it. And when another opportunity came to me, which didn't look anywhere near as attractive, and I'm not sure if you people know, but the firm I worked for was a Japanese organisation that bought Lehman Brothers when it went bust. And it was about rebuilding something. And it was a big risk. It was a huge risk. But I thought, you know what? I'd rather take that risk. I'm not going to basically dismantle this guy's career and take his seat, which is what a lot of guys that do what I do.
Yeah, and they do.
And it's been great because, well, notwithstanding the fact that Deutsche Bank share price is where it is and ours is where it is, but which at the end of the day is why you go to work, I suppose. But that's just something I've always shied away from. You know, benefiting from the disadvantage of others is just something I find hard.
Talking about courage then, how would you describe moments of fortitude that you've had to demonstrate in the course of your career? You just mentioned one there, but any other milestones that you would look at when Arthur Anderson went through his piece, or and other things around teamwork and process and working with others?
Yeah, I mean, it starts off much earlier than that. Like I said, you know, what I've applied in my career, I think was forged in my youth. And after my mother died, just saying, I'm going to go on and succeed, you know. I went to uni, 5-year degree, 2 degrees. I was really helped though because of the people that I met. And then to you know, go out and into the career that I did, I went out and worked in Asia and Brunei of all places where I met my wife, you know. But even things just like falling in love is a big risk, you know. I think then moving to the other side of the planet to start again. I mean, I was at the stage of my career in Australia that, you know, I was really getting to a point where I was going to be the guy. And then, but for personal reasons, we moved over here. And, you know, the city's a big, scary place when you're at that age and stage.
Yeah, sure.
And so for me, the fortitude kind of just comes from backing yourself. I'm also a huge believer that if you can't back yourself, what else can you back? Because, again, coming back to what's within your control, the amount of time and effort you put in is within your control. How thoughtful you are around what you're going to focus on and what you're going to ignore. You know, commercial judgment is totally within your control if you spend enough time thinking about it, right? And so those are the things I've always really relied upon to sort of get ahead. And just similar to Pat, you know, when I've had something in my life that's been a real challenge, it's amazing how that creates a step change like that, and then another challenge that goes like that. Yeah.
I think you said something there. We've talked a lot about, and it resonates continually through Stoicism in a practical way, is accountability. And accountability to yourself, your own progress, your own integrity, and so forth. And I think in investment banking, you've done an excellent job of doing that, and you continue to.
Thanks, Steve.
Talking about resilience then, to cover out a career in investment banking, and one of the reasons I wanted Guy to talk today, because we have some other financial careers in this room, but also we have some aspiring younger audience in this room that want to be an investment banker and want to be in private equity and want to take that journey. and have some of Guy's experience for those young people in this room is crucially a great part of the foundation as a networking and as a mentor. But I wanted to ask this question around resilience. To carve out a career as an investment banker, talk to us about resilience to stay in the course, because it's a tough go. It's well compensated if you get it right, but week after week, month after month, year after year, how does this continually evolve for you?
It has been really tough, I've got to say. I mean, as I say, I started out life as an insolvency and restructuring guy at Arthur Andersen, and that basically means you get appointed into companies that are in deep distress, where the outcomes are not great, they're not positive, it's all limiting the downside, how many cents in the dollar you can get back to shareholders. And in those circumstances, you see the worst of human behaviour that you were referring to before. Everybody goes to look after their own interests, and it is a tough way to cut your teeth when you're a young fella. When you're sent into a business, it's being shut down, the founder's being told all his assets are being taken, and you basically have to go through and fire every single individual. I was like 24 years old, sitting down, people have been working in this business for 20 years, and explaining to them the facts of life and why they no longer have a job and how long it's going to be till they get their redundancy payout and all that kind of stuff. I did that in Asia. I worked in Brunei, as I said, and came back from that thinking, I'd really like to work with a company that's got some equity value. It's like, that can't be right, those sales have gone up. That doesn't happen. People said, go and become an investment banker. And I did, and I actually joined the strongest investment bank in Australia at the time, before Goldman Sachs merged with JB Were, and it was UBS. That was just a phenomenal shop. But I described some of the working conditions earlier. I mean, you'd go to work, you'd be in there by about 8 in the morning, and you were not even an even money chance of getting home by midnight. And Friday we used to call Poets' Day, which is a great acronym. It's piss off early because tomorrow's Saturday. And because you knew you were coming on Sunday. You knew you were coming in for work. So you'd knock off at 3:30 on a Friday, go for some beers, go and watch some footy, do whatever. But you knew you were going to be back. Because this is back before dial-up internet. I mean, do you remember that old sound that... you just go in the office, right, back in those days. I'm literally that old. I remember when they said, here's this thing called Excel, Windows and stuff. So anyways, learn all that, and then obviously my wife says, well, look, we weren't married at the time, I think it'd be good to go back to England. It's like, I've just done all this work, I've got real clients, all that kind of thing. Start again, push button, 2.0. And then to come here, I worked with UBS for about a year. Deutsche approached me. I went there. I started on the 13th of August 2007, which is, some bankers will know, was 3 days after you started the official credit crunch, the global financial crisis, 3 days later. And so what I went there for, which was to access this unbelievable capital markets machine to assist me with my clients and stuff, it was illusory for 2 years. That was shut, right? And so then you think about the redundancies that went through, the number of people who were taken out over the rounds and rounds and rounds. I was there for nearly 8 years, about 7.5 years. It's tough. You basically work your butt off with like the sword of Damocles hanging over the top of you, that I've got to say was probably in my professional career that period where the Stoic principles worked the best, because definitely there's loads of stuff that is not within your control. You cannot control the hierarchy. You cannot control the markets. They will be up, they'll be shut, they'll be doing whatever they're doing. But as I say, you can work harder and be thoughtful, and that's what I did. And you can't control your bonus. In my game, you work for a big upside in your comp, and there were years where, literally, as the market recovered, my clients would be paying us double what they'd ever paid us before, and my comp would go down. And I was like, well, there's only one thing I can do, is work harder and do better. And funnily enough, then someone comes out and says, we've surveyed the entire market, and you're the guy that we want to help us do what we're going to do. And that, I think, is just over the course. It's just such a great sort of philosophy. And I'm a father of 3. It's the one thing I really want my children, I want to pass on to my kids is resilience. Because part of this foundation and my sort of element of it, I see it all the time with either grads that come to us or clients who have got kids in the around 20 years of age, etc. And they're very well off anyway. They've had such benefits in their life. All the instant gratification of social media and all these things, and they haven't really thought about who they are, and they're not working towards something, right? And I think resilience, I think that is such a valuable thing. That's what I want my kids to have, and I want them to have the courage to go after something that they're passionate about, but do it really well, go hard at it. Yeah.